You know, if you were setting out to learn how to crack a safe, taking advice from, like, a notorious bank robber might actually make sense.
Right.
You'd want an expert.
Exactly. But if you were looking for advice on how to build a stable, ethical, and, massively successful life, you probably wouldn't ask someone who spent half their life running from creditors or facing fraud charges.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, you would certainly want a guide whose own life was a testament to stability, right? We tend to prefer our thought leaders to have pristine, unblemished resumes.
Which brings us to this massive historical paradox today. We are opening up a really huge stack of sources on Napoleon Hill's 16 Principles of Success.
Yes.
And these principles are essentially the foundational blueprint for modern self-improvement. They're allegedly the exact same concepts used by titans, from Andrew Carnegie to, modern tech billionaires.
But they were codified by a man whose own life was, well, it was just a chaotic roller coaster. Just brilliant insights, failed businesses, and outright scandals.
Wow.
It is a deeply complex story. We're looking at excerpts from modern workbooks like 3 Feet from Gold, reviews of his staggering 1928 manuscript, The Law of Success.
Which is huge, by the way.
Massive. And we've got deep dives into his very specific self-confidence formula and a biographical profile of Hill himself that, honestly, it reads like a Hollywood thriller.
Yeah, it really does. But before we jump into all of that, we need to set some ground rules for you, the listener, because we are dealing with historical figures involved in cults, fraud, and early 20th century capitalism.
Right, lots of baggage there.
So much baggage.
Yeah.
And, highly debated modern workplace concepts, too. So we want to be incredibly clear here. We are here to impartially report on the contents of these sources.
Exactly, just reporting the facts.
We aren't taking sides, and we certainly aren't endorsing the controversial actions of Napoleon Hill or, like, the specific corporate philosophies contained in his books. Our mission is simply to extract and understand the concepts as they were written.
And figure out why they've survived for a century.
Okay, let's unpack this. Who exactly was this guy?
Right, so Oliver Napoleon Hill was born in 1883 in a one-room cabin near the Appalachian town of Pound in southwest Virginia. And if you believe the mythology he built around himself, his life totally changed in 1908.
Right, the famous interview.
Yeah. He was a young reporter assigned to interview the industrialist Andrew Carnegie. And Carnegie was, one of the wealthiest men in human history.
Still is, historically speaking.
Exactly. And according to Hill, Carnegie challenged him, this young reporter, to spend 20 years interviewing hundreds of successful people. We're talking Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell.
Giants.
Right, to discover a universal formula for success.
The sources, however, paint a reality that throws a massive wrench into that origin story.
Oh, a huge wrench.
Historians actually doubt Hill ever sat in a room with Andrew Carnegie, like, at all. There is zero evidence of it in Carnegie's meticulous archives. And in 1908, the exact same year this mythical meeting supposedly happened, Hill was facing bankruptcy and mail fraud charges in Alabama tied to a lumber company he co-founded.
Yeah, and his career path only gets wilder from there. He fled to Washington, D.C., dropped his first name Oliver, and started the Automobile College of Washington.
Right, which was supposed to assemble cars, I think.
They were supposed to assemble cars, yeah. But the partner corporation went bankrupt. So Hill pivoted to teaching people how to sell cars. And he incentivized his students to sell the college's courses to other people for a commission.
Wait, so he essentially created an early multi-level marketing structure.
Pretty much. And I have to mention the cult because it is just too bizarre.
Oh, the baby Jean thing, yes. Please explain this.
So fast forward a few decades, right? After making and losing fortunes, he and his wife joined the Royal Fraternity of the Master Metaphysicians down in Florida.
That name alone is a red flag.
Right. And Helen Hill actually became the godfather to a child named Baby Jean. The cult unofficially adopted this infant and claimed they were going to raise her on a special diet and belief system so she would become physically immortal.
I mean, immortal. Literally immortal.
Literally immortal. The child was eventually, and thankfully, returned to her biological mother. The cult leader ended up in prison.
Okay, good.
But it illustrates the chaotic frequency Hill operated on. He was frequently running from state regulators for blue sky law violations.
And for those unfamiliar, blue sky laws are state regulations designed to protect investors against securities fraud, like literally stopping people from selling shares of the blue sky.
Exactly. He was a man constantly embroiled in schemes, just cycling through marriages and bankruptcies.
This is where I have to pause and ask the obvious question. How can you possibly trust a map drawn by a guy who drove his earned car into the ditch over and over again?
It's a fair question.
I mean, why should we spend the rest of this deep dive breaking down a 16-step formula for success from a guy who seemed to fail spectacularly at managing his own reality?
What's fascinating here is that the philosophy outgrew the man. Despite his profound personal chaos, the framework he synthesized became undeniable.
Undeniable how?
Well, he struggled for years, but he documented everything. He produced a 500-page manuscript in 1925 that was universally rejected. But he didn't quit. He expanded it into a 1,400-page, 8-volume beast of a book in 1928 called The Law of Success.
1,400 pages.
Yeah. And the principles within that text have been tested, broken apart, and adopted by millions of people who actually did achieve massive stability and ethical success. The ideas stand on their own structural integrity.
I suppose if you survive enough shipwrecks, you eventually learn how to build a better boat.
That's a great way to put it.
Let's look at the actual planks of that boat.
Yeah.
The absolute bedrock, the first of the 16 principles, is definiteness of purpose, or establishing a definite chief aim. And the sources make a bold claim here.
They really do.
They state that just pinning this down puts you ahead of 98% of the population.
Because most people live their lives in a state of drift, just reacting to whatever happens to them. Definiteness of purpose requires establishing a singular, crystal clear goal.
And the texts outline how this provides congruency, clarity, and certainty, right?
Yes. It acts as a cognitive filter for every single choice you make.
Choosing a goal sounds basic, though. I mean, how does simply writing down a goal automatically give you an advantage over 98% of people?
It triggers a psychological mechanism. When you have a definite purpose, you are forced to specialize. You abandon the exhausting effort of trying to be moderately good at everything.
Which frees up a lot of energy.
Exactly. And you also naturally adopt another key principle from the sources, the habit of saving. But Hill didn't just mean hoarding money in a bank.
Oh, he meant something broader.
Yeah, he meant the strict budgeting of your time, your energy, and your capital. Every unit of your life becomes a targeted investment toward that goal. Biologically speaking, it activates your brain's reticular activating system.
Oh, so your mind literally becomes sensitized to recognize opportunities, people, and resources that you previously would have just ignored.
Precisely.
I visualize it like a magnifying glass. You know, if you let sunlight hit a piece of paper, it just warms up the surface. But if you hold a magnifying glass between the sun and the paper,
You concentrate it.
right, you concentrate all that scattered ambient energy into one microscopic point, and you can start a fire. But here is the hurdle. What if you are staring at a blank piece of paper? How do the sources suggest you actually find this grand purpose if you are currently stuck in a rut?
The 3 Feet from Gold workbook offers a very structured formula called the success equation to solve that exact problem. It's laid out literally like a math problem.
Oh, I love this part.
It goes like this. Passion plus talent multiplied by association multiplied by action plus faith equals your success equation.
Let's break down that math for a second. So passion and talent are the baseline numbers. You have to isolate the things that genuinely interest you and combine them with your actual demonstrated skills. But adding those together isn't enough, because the equation says you have to multiply that baseline by association and action.
That is the critical variable. Because if your action is 0, the entire core of the equation zeroes out.
Because anything multiplied by 0 is 0.
Exactly. A talented, passionate person who does nothing achieves nothing. The sources demand that you deconstruct the vision, you build a 10-year plan, slice that into a 1-year plan, and establish daily, measurable actions. You are engineering a trajectory.
Engineering the plan is one thing, but maintaining the mental fortitude to execute it is another. Which moves us to the psychological tools, imagination and self-confidence.
Yeah, and imagination is positioned not as daydreaming here, but as a practical utility. It is the tool you use to generate innovative solutions to the obstacles blocking your definite purpose. The texts heavily lean on a concept called acres of diamonds.
I love this concept. The basic premise is that we all think our big break is located in some distant city or some elusive future moment.
Right.
But usually, the greatest opportunities are hiding in plain sight, like right beneath our feet, waiting for our imagination to uncover them.
The sources use the historical story of Marshall Field to anchor this. Have you heard this one?
The Chicago Fire one.
Yes. So during the Great Chicago Fire, Field stood on the street and watched his massive retail retail store burned down to the foundation.
Just totally destroyed.
Everything.
Mm-hmm.
Other merchants were standing next to him watching their own businesses burn, and they decided to pack up and leave Chicago entirely.
I mean, you can't blame them.
True. But Field looked at the exact same smoking crater, used his imagination, and visualized the world's greatest retail store rising from those specific ashes. He stayed, rebuilt, and created a retail empire.
Visualizing a retail empire while your life's work is literally smoking requires an almost irrational level of the next principle: self-confidence.
It really does.
And Hill didn't just offer empty platitudes like believing yourself. He wrote out a highly rigid, 5-step self-confidence formula.
It is an intense daily regimen. The formula mandates spending 30 minutes every single day intentionally visualizing the person you intend to become.
Every day.
Every single day. Then you spend 10 minutes demanding self-confidence from yourself through a process called autosuggestion. You write down your chief aim, commit it to memory, and repeat it aloud daily.
Okay, repeating things in the mirror always sounds a bit cliche to me.
Yeah.
What is the actual mechanism at play here? How does talking to yourself create confidence?
It comes down to neuroplasticity and the subconscious mind. Autosuggestion is a deliberate attempt to rewrite your internal neural pathways.
Oh, interesting.
When you constantly repeat a narrative, you create a psychological friction cognitive dissonance between your current reality and the reality you're describing.
And the brain hates that dissonance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The brain naturally seeks to resolve that dissonance by subtly shifting your behaviors, your posture, and your decisions to align with the repeated narrative. Over time, you manufacture the confidence you are demanding.
That reframes it from a mystical chant into like a psychological workout.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this mental conditioning is required for two other massive principles: accurate thinking and self-control.
Accurate thinking being what exactly?
The vital ability to separate verifiable facts from mere assumptions, opinions, or fake news. And self-control is the discipline required to govern your emotions so you can actually perform accurate thinking. You cannot accurately assess a problem if you are emotionally spiraling out of control.
So at this point in the blueprint, we have a very robust internal engine. We have a purpose, we are budgeting our energy, we are using imagination, and we are exercising self-control.
Right.
But an engine running in a garage doesn't go anywhere. You have to connect it to the rest of the world. That brings us to external relationships and the principles of cooperation, pleasing personality, tolerance, and the golden rule.
Hill believed that interpersonal dynamics were the ultimate force multiplier. This is where he introduces his most famous concept: the mastermind.
The mastermind.
He defined this as an alliance of two or more minds working in perfect harmony toward a definite objective.
He describes the mastermind as creating a third, invisible, intangible force. Again, that sounds incredibly mystical. Are we talking about some kind of telepathy?
It sounds esoteric, but the underlying mechanism is incredibly grounded. Think of it as cognitive synergy. When you bring people together who have complete trust and a shared goal.
Which requires cooperation, right?
Exactly. Their combined diverse perspectives essentially create a superbrain. If I have a blind spot in finance, but you are an expert, and you have a blind spot in marketing, but I am an expert, our combined collaboration produces solutions that neither of us could have ever generated in isolation.
So that compounding effect is the third mind.
Yes. And Hill claimed this was the real secret to Andrew Carnegie's dominance. Carnegie wasn't the preeminent technical expert in steelmaking. His genius was assembling a mastermind of men who were.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because to build a mastermind like that, you need people to actually want to help you. Which leads to one of the most heavily emphasized and perhaps most controversial principles in the 1928 text: the habit of doing more than paid for.
Yes. Hill calls this the law of increasing returns. He argues that going significantly beyond what is expected of you is the primary way to create undeniable value and attract powerful allies.
Okay, I have to put the brakes on here on behalf of anyone listening who works in a modern corporate environment.
I was waiting for this.
Right. Because we are living in an era of burnout, stagnant wages, and quiet quitting, where people are actively encouraged to only do the exact job they are compensated for to protect their mental health.
Yeah.
Telling someone today to make a daily habit of doing free work for a massive corporation sounds like a fast track to exploitation.
That is a highly relevant modern tension. It's crucial to remember we are analyzing a philosophy from 1928, not taking a stance on modern labor practices.
Fair enough.
However, if we look at Hill's underlying logic, he isn't advocating for corporate subservience. He frames doing more than paid for as a deeply selfish strategic maneuver.
How does doing free labor benefit the worker selfishly?
Because you are treating your current environment as a laboratory. You aren't giving your boss free labor. You are using their company as a free gym to build your own career muscles.
Oh, that's a wild shift in perspective.
Right. By intentionally over-delivering, you are increasing your own efficiency, mastering new skills, and building an unparalleled reputation. You force the market to recognize your surplus value.
So either your current employer realizes they have to promote you to retain that value, or another employer or your own future clients will happily poach you.
Exactly. If you only ever do exactly what you are paid for, you are cementing your own growth at your current salary level.
I see. It's an aggressive investment in your own market capitalization. And to make sure people actually notice that value, the sources point to the need for a pleasing personality.
Which simply means developing traits that reduce friction and attract cooperation.
And you also need tolerance, right? The open-mindedness to accept different opinions and the golden rule.
Yes. Treating people ethically isn't just about morality here. It is the structural skill required to build the trust that allows a mastermind to function.
The remaining principles in the framework are essentially the daily operating system required to keep this entire machine moving over the span of a lifetime.
You need health, both physical and mental, because without raw biological energy, the system collapses.
Right.
You need enthusiasm, acting as the spark plug to approach your work with contagious passion. You need initiative and leadership, meaning you take proactive action instead of waiting for instructions.
And you need concentration.
Yeah.
The steering wheel that keeps all your energy focused entirely on that definite purpose.
But even with a perfect engine, a clear map, and a great crew, the sources acknowledge a brutal truth.
You are still going to crash.
You are still going to crash. That is why profiting by failure is listed as one of the 16 core principles.
The text treats success as a lifelong process of iteration, right?
Yes. Failure is completely stripped of its emotional weight and treated simply as a data point. Profiting from failure means using accurate thinking to extract the lesson from the wreckage, adjusting your plan, and immediately applying initiative to start again.
So what does this all mean? It brings us full circle to the grand irony of Napoleon Hill's life. He was the ultimate walking case study for profiting by failure.
He really was.
He crashed his own metaphorical car so many times that he knew exactly where every single pothole and guardrail was located. His failures with the lumber company and the car college, it forced him to aggressively analyze what was going wrong, study people who were succeeding, and write these exact rules.
It is entirely possible that his proximity to disaster is what made him so uniquely qualified to identify the antidotes.
You can actually see his own harsh life lessons embedded in the text. The fifth step of his self-confidence formula explicitly demands that you eliminate hatred, envy, jealousy, selfishness, and cynicism.
He wrote that no wealth can endure unless it is built upon truth and justice.
He learned the hard way that running scams doesn't build a legacy. He concluded that you only succeed by attracting the right forces to yourself.
If we synthesize this entire ecosystem, we see how brilliantly the principles interlock. Definiteness of purpose hands you the destination. Self-confidence, imagination, and health fuel the engine.
Your mastermind and your cooperation, lubricated by a pleasing personality and tolerance, allow you to leverage the immense power of others.
Doing more than paid for and enthusiasm provide your momentum, and accurate thinking, self-control, concentration, and profiting by failure keep you from driving off a cliff.
It is a remarkable toolkit. Whether you are trying to launch a startup, navigate corporate politics, or just bring some order to your personal life, you now understand the mechanics of this blueprint.
You can start practicing the habit of saving your time today.
You can build your success equation tonight.
This raises an important question to leave our listeners with. Hill explicitly wrote that the subconscious mind is like a magnet. He observed that millions of people spend their days intensely concentrating on poverty, anxiety, and failure.
And as a result, they get those things in overabundance.
His ultimate conclusion was that anything the human mind can believe, the human mind can achieve.
It makes you wonder to what extent the obstacles in your life are external, and to what extent they are simply the result of what you have unknowingly convinced yourself is true. If your subconscious is indeed a magnet, what exactly are you choosing to attract right now? We'll leave you to chew on that. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.